Thanks for joining us. In this video, we will be discussing the raw materials that we may consider for our spirits production and doing an overview of the characteristics, challenges, and efficiencies of the raw materials, be they fruits, vegetables, sugarcane, agave, or grains. So at the beginning of our journey to craft a spirit, the step that creates alcohol is fermentation. At its most basic, we have the simple fermentation equation of sugar plus yeast giving alcohol. Then our fermented alcohol is concentrated through distillation to become distilled alcohol, or what we call spirits. Now, in each of these stages, we have the ability to add character to the spirit. We're going to start at the start, here at the sugar stage. The type of sugar we choose, or the way we create that sugar prior to fermentation, can change almost everything about the spirit. Not only its flavors, textures, strength, and more, but often its legal identity. So again, before there can be distillation, there has to be fermentation. And before fermentation, there has to be a carbohydrate fuel for yeast to metabolize. At this level, we're talking sugars, fermentable sugars, meaning sugars that can be used in fermentation. And we can get sugars from some obvious places and then from some less obvious places where conversion, the process of making sugars from other carbs, has to take place. Now, sugar, as we know, is very commonly found in fruits. That is what makes them sweet and also represent an easily available source of sugars for fermentation. But just like us, every animal on the planet is after sugar in one way or the other. So often getting it to the yeast before other critters start eating it can be a challenge. So we'll talk about fruit, but we're also going to include sugar cane here, as cane juice is close enough to fruit juice to be discussed together at this level. For many of our popular spirits from around the world, the base carbohydrates are found in grains and unlocked by enzymatic processes. This adds an additional step before fermentation, or sometimes during fermentation, in order to get fermentable sugar from those grains. Fructans are a fructose-based carbohydrate found inside many plants in the order Asparagales. And for this class, we're going to be looking only at those in the Agave genus. And then we have other plants that also use enzymatic action to free up sugars for fermentation. As we move into individual spirit categories, we will discuss these again in those videos. But it's important to understand that this step is common regardless of the category. All right, the use of fruits and sugar. Many plants make fruit as a way to disperse their offspring. We animals love sugar and will eat the sweet parts and then eject the undigestible seeds at a later time. Most fruiting plants live for multiple years and create fruit every year that we can use. Sugarcane is harvested every year with the roots left in the ground for more stems to grow each year. It's basically a grass that we mow each year that has high levels of sugar in the stalks of the plant. In both cases, we smash them up and then press out the sugary juice that we can then use. This juice is very volatile and susceptible to spoilage and oxidation. Thousands of bacteria and wild yeasts are ambient or just present in the surrounding air, and they are looking for something to eat. Now, sometimes we add less juicy fruits to an already distilled spirit and then redistill that, bypassing fermentation altogether. This will add flavor, but we aren't going to talk much about these as they aren't fermented, or if they are a little bit, they aren't the core carbohydrate foundation for the spirit. Now, in wine production, which is of course fermented grape juice, after we've picked, pressed, and fermented our juice to make wine, we will still have grape skins left over that have some sugar and alcohol sometimes still present. These leftover grape skins in either case are called pomace. White wine pomace has some sugar, and red wine pomace will have a little sugar and some alcohol still in it. These are our bases for red and white grappas. Now, if we take that wine that we made, that fermented grape juice, then distill that into a spirit, those are called brandies. Now, most sugarcane and sugarcane juice is used to make sugar. You boil off the water and make cane syrup and then sugar. And after doing this a few times to your pressed cane juice, you end up with molasses of different grades. But this still has some sugar left in it. Now, the later stage syrups and the molasses have less sugar in them and are less likely to spoil, so they can be more easily stored, so more easily sold as well. Molasses, once diluted with water, is what most rums are made from. Flavors of caramel, brown sugar, and even toffee can come from rums made with molasses, while cane juice rums often will have an herbal, grassy character. Now on to grains. Grains are the base for whiskeys and also some vodkas. Grains are the seeds of grasses, and barley, corn, wheat, rye, these are all grasses whose seeds we can use. Now, when a plant makes sugar during photosynthesis that it doesn't want or need to use right away, it will store it as a starch. Starches are comprised of thousands of glucose molecules bonded together. These starch molecules are then wrapped up or bound to form granules. Yeast can't readily consume these starch granules. Not much else can either. So it's a nice, safe, and space-saving way for a plant to store sugar for the future or for its offspring. For us to transform these granules back to the sugar form that yeast can eat, we're often looking at a process called malting as well as cooking. Barley is generally our malted grain, and the others are cooked and then mixed with that malted barley. Malting is taking the barley seed, creating an environment where it thinks it's time to grow, like springtime, allowing it to start growing, where it changes its internal chemistry to come out of dormancy. It starts to unwrap those starch granules so the young plant can use them. But most importantly, the plant's own tools to do this are made available first. These tools are enzymes, and that's what we want because those will work not only on the barley, but on other starch granules too. So once this starts happening at germination, we then kill the young plant with heat, but manage to preserve those created enzymes. This product is called malt, and these enzymes in malt will convert starches to sugar in barley and for other grains that it's added to. This ground up malt can also be stored ready to go, which is handy compared to our fruit-based raw materials. Our other grains are also ground up and mixed with water and cooked to loosen or unwrap those tightly bound starch molecules. This addition of heat and water is another important part of the process. The other grains don't have, or at least don't have enough of, the enzymes to do this conversion. So barley as malt is added. Now there are other sources of enzymes to do this job, but for instance in Scotland, malted barley is mandated as the only source of enzymes for this conversion process. Without conversion and liberating those glucose molecules, yeast cannot act on the trapped sugars. What we get after conversion is a sugary liquid, often called wort, that can then be fermented. Now, another way some plants store their energy is through a fructan structure. These are not as bound up as the starches and are mainly comprised of fructose molecules. This is how agave plants store carbs, a source for fermentation and distillation in Central America, where they specialize in agave-based spirits. You will often hear the term inulin used in place of fructan, but inulin is just a single type of long-chain fructan and is not the only one we're concerned with, so we're going to use the term fructans. Agave plants are different than almost any other sugar source we deal with, in that agaves are not harvested annually. Over the course of 5 to sometimes 30 years, they build up fructan-based carbohydrate reserves in the core of their plant structure called the pina. It often looks like a pineapple, and pina is the Spanish word for pineapple. This sits above ground, just above the root structure, and is protected by spiky leaves. At maturity, these fructans are at their peak, and the plant's mission in life now is to send up a stalk with all its flowers, to have sex with its neighbors, disperse fertilized seeds, and then die. The fructans stored in the pina will be consumed as part of this process. For us drinkers or distillers, we want to harvest that pina right before this happens. Not only do we have the greatest amount of material, but we also have a ripeness and flavor quality to the pina, which translates to more discernible and desirable flavors being present in our spirit. Of course, this has implications for the plant's ability to procreate and implications for the animals that would take advantage of the flowering process, which we'll discuss deeper in other lectures. So we have our harvested pina, and now we use water and heat to both release the sugars and soften the pina so we can get at those fructans and activate hydrolytic enzymes that are already within the plant, although often we'll add some as well to release those sugars. These are different enzymes than in grains, and we don't need the same type of conversion to get sugar out of fructans. This heating can help and also impart flavors in Maillard reactions. Now, this is not the only place where Maillard reactions take place. They can take place at almost any stage of production. Maillard reactions are the cooking, or more like the browning type of reactions that happen in cooking. These create flavors or alter existing flavors. At its basic, it's why a grilled steak tastes different than a boiled steak. The grilled steak has more Maillard reactions. It's a change in flavor due to heating or a slight burning and can create flavors during raw material processing all the way through fermentation, and it can also happen during distillation. Now, the cooking process here for our agaves is done by steaming either in an autoclave, which is basically a large pressure cooker, or in brick ovens, or by cooking over a fire. Traditionally, the fire is created in a pit, pinas are placed on top, and then covered to create an earthen oven designed to slow roast but not burn the pinas. In either case, you now have a softened pina with fermentable sugar inside of it that you'll then crush to release the sugary juice. The demand for these spirits, especially tequila, has led to techniques that shorten this process. There's a machine called a diffuser, which will take a harvested pina, maybe not even a fully ripe one, right from the field. And in a milling type chemical bath environment, it can quickly extract the sugars. When you're dealing with a plant source that takes multiple years to mature, it can be a challenge to respond to increases in demand. Another response to this possible supply lag is the regular practice of adding cane or corn-based sugars to the agave sugars to increase the resulting volume of fermented liquid. Now on to vegetables. And while there are a number of vegetables used as the raw material around the world, at this level we're only going to discuss potatoes as we discuss vodka later on. Vegetables can be the base in Japanese shochu or in the largest by volume of any category, Korean soju. The carbohydrate profile of potatoes and other vegetables is a bit closer to grains than fruits or agave, and just like grains, they need hot water to unwind the starch granules and then some enzymes on hand to get those carbs converted into sugar. Potatoes do have some of these enzymes, or amylase enzymes, to help create sugar, but outside enzymes, or what we call exogenous enzymes, are almost always added. So in this lecture, we discussed what raw materials we may consider for our spirit production and the characteristics of fruit, vegetables, sugarcane, agave, and grains. We also talked about how to process these raw materials to create a liquid fermentable sugar that our yeast will be able to utilize to make alcohol through fermentation.